Hi, hello. Today we shall be developing variance decomposition under VAR environment, right? And we have three variables such as GDP, export, and money supply. We have these three variables. So the variables are here. You can see export, GDP, money supply. So I have these three variables. I can open it as a group. So from 1981, export, GDP, money supply. From 1981 until, you can see, until 1991, and these are all quarterly data, right? So that is our data. Okay, now, okay, but here we assume that all the variables are stationary in nature because VAR model needs stationary data to run it all the time, and also lacks selection criteria has advised us to take 4 lakhs in the VAR model to be optimum lakhs. So all these things we assume without checking it. Okay, now we can proceed to develop the VAR model and then variance decomposition. Okay, so this is our data and model. So I go to quick estimate VAR, and here I put our endogenous variables GDP, then I put export, then I put money supply, and here the lag I put 4 because the lag selection criteria has advised me to take lag 4. So we are set, and here I choose the unrestricted VAR. So that is set. We are ready. Now click on OK. So the outcome has come up. You can see the VAR model, GDP, export, and money supply. So these are all dependent variable, and this is my model, and all these things are independent variable, but they have 4 lakhs in total. Okay, now from here I shall develop the variance decomposition. Okay, how to proceed? I click on the view, then I select variance decomposition as before. I select it. Just 1 minute. Okay, I select it, and here I take 10 lakh. Why 10 period? That means 10 quarter. Here I take 10 quarter, right? Because our data is quarterly data. Suppose I take 10 quarter. Okay, then I put here all this thing I keep as it is, and this is the Cholesky decomposition. It is set. Then I select the table one to get it. Then I press OK to run the model. Okay, so this is my result of the variance decomposition. You can see from here, right? You can see the first one is the variance decomposition of GDP. The second one is the variance decomposition of export, and the third one is the variance decomposition of money. And you can see it is the period 1 2. That means there are 10 quarters. From here to here I can forecast for the 10 quarter ahead, and GDP, export and money is there. Okay, so here are two things. One is short run and one is long run. Okay, so suppose here I take a quarter 3. You can see from here this is quarter 3, and what is happening here in the quarter 3, which is in the short run. Okay, so I can explain this one. Quarter 3, what is going on? Okay, I can explain here. You can see I can write it here. So I just take it down. I can take it down. Okay, I take it down. Okay, I take it down. Okay, I can write it here, or I can write it in the up. That is better for me. Okay, in the up. That is better. Okay, first I take about quarter 3. Just a minute. I set it first. Okay, I start writing. Okay, quarter 3. You can see. So here, suppose I talk about this. Suppose I talk about in the short run. In the short run, see, the short run means that is quarter 3. That is quarter 3. Impulse or innovation or shock to GDP account for 97.66% variation of the fluctuation in GDP. That means I can call it own shock. That is number 1. I explain about this one, 97.666309 in quarter 3. So meaning that the shock in the GDP can cause 97.66% variation of the fluctuation in GDP. So I can call it own shock. Okay, the second shock we can talk about now, that shock to what? The second variable, export. Shock to export can cause how much? Shock to export can cause 1.06% fluctuation in GDP. you can see from here 1.06% fluctuation in GDP. But shock to money supply causes how much? 1.26% fluctuation in GDP. But as a result, as a whole, total fluctuation become 100%, because you can see 97.66% plus 1.06% plus 1.26%, it becomes 100%, and that is happening in the short run, that is quarter 3. Okay, then what happens in the long run? Quarter 10, it is here. Quarter 10, we can see from here, this is 56.92%. It means that the shock to GDP can contribute 56.92% to GDP. That means I can call it own shock. Okay, then what about this one? 41.95%, meaning that shock to export can contribute 41.95% fluctuation in the variance of GDP. Then finally money supply, the 1.11%, meaning that an impulse or shock on money supply can cause 1.11% fluctuation in GDP. So here what is happening in the short run and long run? What is happening? You can see in the short run, the GDP can contribute 97.66%, but in the long run, contribution to GDP has gone down. But in case of export, in the short run, they contribute 1.06% to the fluctuation of GDP, but in the long run they can contribute 41.9% in the fluctuation of GDP. What about money supply? In the short run, money supply can cause 1.26% in the fluctuation of GDP, but in the long run also 1.11%. That means the story remain unchanged, right? But export can really causes in the fluctuation of GDP. That is no doubt about it. Okay. Okay, so that is the first one. I talk about second one, the variance decomposition of export. That is the second one I can explain. Okay, so again the same story, short run and long run. Okay, short run I take quarter 3 as before, and I take 7.03%. What does it mean? A shock in the GDP can cause 7.03% fluctuation in GDP. And what about this one? 92.89%. It means that an impulse on export can cause 92.89% to export. That means own shock. It is own shock, right? And money supply, a shock in the money supply can cause 0.07% fluctuation in GDP. Okay, and what about this one, GDP? So this one I am telling again. A shock to GDP can cause 7.03% fluctuation in export, because here actually this one is the variance decomposition of export. That means here the target is the export. Okay, and what happens in the long run? Quarter 10, you can see 7.27%, meaning that in the short run an innovation or shock to GDP can cause 7.2% fluctuation in export. And then a shock to export in the long run can cause 92.07% fluctuation in export, meaning that own shock. Then the third one, a shock to money supply can cause 0.65% fluctuation in export in the long run. So here what we can see in the short run and long run. Short run GDP 7.03%, long run also 7.27%, meaning that a shock to GDP cannot contribute to export much. That means short run and long run the story remain the same. And what about money supply? Short run is 0.07%, long run has gone down 0.65%, meaning that a shock to the money supply cannot contribute much in the fluctuation of export, neither in the short run nor in the long run. But a shock in the export can really contribute to itself in the short run and also in the long run, right? Okay, so that is the second one. And what third one? Variance decomposition money supply, right? That is the third issue that we have. You can see from here. So here the money supply is the target. Okay, also the same story. In the short run, that is quarter 3, a shock to GDP can contribute in the fluctuation of money supply is 1.87%, and in the long run, that is quarter 10, a shock in the GDP can cause 3.2% in the variance fluctuation of money supply. Okay, then what about export? In the short run, an impulse on the export can cause 0.14% variance fluctuation in the money supply. But in the long run, an innovation or shock or impulse can cause 3.5% variation in the forecast error of money supply. And finally, a shock to money supply can cause 97.98% in the variance forecast error variance of money supply. And also in the long run, it can also contribute a lot, around 92.67%, meaning that a shock to GDP and a shock to export cannot influence in the money supply in the short run as well as in the long run. So that is the outcome of the whole result that we have so far. Okay, so we are done, I think, and thank you, and thank you very much for being with me for a while.